Geek Insider is proud to present our special guest, Rob Andersin, the Indie Devil.
Well, Rob, why don't you start us out? Introduce yourself. Tell us about you, the comic, and we'll take off from there.
Yeah.
Sounds good. For those who don't know, I am called the Indie Advocate because I help out indie creators with a site called indieadvocates.com. I promote their work. I do it all because I'm an indie creator myself, and very few people actually realize that sometimes because of all the advocating I do. They're like, you make comic books? I'm like, yeah. So I had to actually create two different personas for myself so people understood. So I'm Rob Andersin, the Indie Advocate, and I became the Indie Devil. The minute I became the Indie Devil, because I make books about fetish, monsters, and more, people got it. And suddenly I was this personality. So I do create books that are very challenging to the social norm, but I do it in a very unique way that's actually respectful to a lot of people, and I don't sell out to any too sexual. Not that there's anything wrong with sex. I want to establish that. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm putting down the idea that sexuality is only a tool to sell comic books. You can talk about it in an adult way, too. And that's basically what I do. Plus, I also make kids' books with a farting elephant that teaches morals. So I'm all across the board when it comes to creating. I don't have a genre. I just write.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's I think that's a lot of that's something that a lot of creators have a problem with is they find a niche and then they find themselves kind of pigeonholed into that. And as a creator, a content creator, I mean the world is your oyster, you know? I mean, you shouldn't just limit yourself to that. And I was pretty impressed with that range that you have, you know, because I was looking at the Cat Dad and Supermom, and I was just potato butt. I love, you know, and Elefart, and but then you're also going into Barbara Unleashed,
yeah,
and so. But you're talking about these things, you know, the BDSM. We were on Facebook, and I saw a conversation going on about that. How you're getting a lot of pushback, negativity, censorship. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, for those who don't know, the original project name was Fetish Babies. The reason for it, if you've read the book, you'll know it's because it's meant to be a slur towards the character. It's deliberately meant to be derogatory. She takes something that's derogatory and makes a website to inform other people how not to get hurt. The whole book is actually meant to be a stand against abuse. And it's about teaching people how not to be abused, but also talking about a culture that's very misunderstood. But it doesn't matter. None of that matters if you don't read the book. And what winds up happening is a lot of people see the name Fetish Babies, and that was it. They made things up. Some of them were very disappointing and very hard to hear. Others were just comical. Like I always say, my favorite reviews are from the people who don't read my book because they're always the most interesting ones because they paint my book to be something it's not. And when it comes to Facebook, I can mention BDSM and suddenly get in trouble. But I have a creator out there who will make a book where they tie up girls just to make, you know, sales, and that's okay. Put someone tied up on a cover, and hey, that's fine. Over-sexualize a woman, that's fine. But talk about a subculture in a way that's not making fun of it, and suddenly, oh my God, stop, wait, we can't have that. And I don't understand the disconnect. We're in 2020 now. And there was a creator who said he was going to call Child Protective Services because of that banner that says free hugs and spanks. And of all the things that Child Protective Services has to deal with, yep, there you go. With all
I earned that.
Yes, you did. And with all the things that have going on in the world, just imagine being that person who picks up that phone call. I'm sorry, sir, the sign did what to you? Where did the sign hurt you? You know, like it really is one of those moments where you just shake your head and you're like, I can't believe that you're not getting it. And you don't know the book. And he doesn't know the book. He doesn't even understand the story behind the free hugs and spanks sign. And that's just the reality of the situation and why the book is so important, because no one understands that community, because instantly they're just perverts and dangerous people. And I don't stand by that. I've known too many good people who are into the culture to just let it be written away that way and have everyone be like, oh, they're just bad people. Because I'm a little older than the average person. I remember being in the 80s and I remember the 90s and I remember how there were other cultures that were looked down on sexually. And growing up having a fetish, I was very nervous about it. I've never hidden it. You'd think I would have hidden it, but in my whole life, it's been very out there, including the time that my mom found pictures of a girlfriend tied up in my sock drawer, to which I said, well, don't go through my sock drawer if you're not going to be putting socks away. And I never apologized for who I was, and I still won't apologize for who I am because it's not a choice. And I always equate this to a sexuality. It was never a choice for me. This isn't something I decided one day I'll be cool because I saw 50 Shades of Grey and I'm going to try something. No, this has been part of who I am. And I don't advertise it to the average person, but well, I'm not going to be ashamed to sell a book about it at any show, especially because, very simply put, you have people who are out there having murder books. You have 12-year-olds dressing up as Harley Quinn, 12-year-olds dressing up as Deadpool at conventions. If you don't see that this is a different realm, that's a huge problem. I don't sell the books to minors. They're not even allowed to look at it. I end it right away if a child comes over, and even a teenager. And I do feel bad because I was once a teenager, and I think a lot of us were teenagers. And some of this stuff we have talked about. I've been talking with my editor. Can we make it all ages? And it's not all ages, but like teenage, you know what I mean, for young adults, because there's a lot of safety elements in this. And we don't know exactly how to go forward with that because we want it to be an educational tool for younger generation too. Because let's be honest, the younger generation's being sexual whether we want them to be or not. So we want to stop them from getting hurt. I mean, we don't want to see them doing something because they're seeing, look on Netflix, there's a show called Bonding. And it is the worst example of what our community is. But you see kids who don't understand it, who don't have anyone helping them out, not talking about safety, and suddenly that's what they're doing, and people are getting hurt. So for me, it is hard to see us get attacked for something that we're just being honest about. And it's not all good. If you read the book, it points out very dangerous elements.
Yeah.
But in an educational way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not like you're advocating for violence or anything like that. It's like there is a world out there. But if we can speak to it as adults and say, you know what, I'm not hurting anybody. Everything is consensual here. You know, we have permissions from all parties that are participating. You know, we have safety measures in place. And people get weirded out by these things. Sorry, Matt, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say America, you know, itself still has, pardon the pun, but such a stick up its butt about sex. And like you said a minute ago, Rob, it's 2020. And the book, I mean, I've been around comics for a long time, and I have seen fetish comics that take things to the extreme. There's no attempt at educating, really not even an attempt at entertaining. It's just pure sex and taking the wrong angle at this fetish. And, you know, Rob, your book at the end of Barbara Unleashed, you know, you have the safe words and things that these people should be looking at. And what I see a couple of nipples through both issues of Barbara Unleashed. I mean, it's not, whereas other books like this are highly sexualized. They're showing positions. They're showing, you know, the women tied up and being spanked hard, you know, and this is nothing like that at all. And for someone just to take a stance at the banner, that is case in point, just, you know, the mentality of so many in America these days. You know, there was the commercial during the Super Bowl they wouldn't show because it was so realistic about the woman having to pee when she was pregnant or whatever the hell it was. Yeah. And it's ridiculous because then these teenagers that do grow up like Rob did with having this fetish, having not having an outlet to go for it, they learn it wrong and they end up hurting other people. And for me, something like this, where Rob, where you're taking I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of here, but you're being responsible and not letting the teenagers, even though you know that it could probably help some of them, but you're keeping them away from it. You're not letting the kids have it. And for somebody just to come up and say that they're going to call CPS because of the banner, you know, that seems to be, it's almost on the lines of those people that call, you know, people call the cops for barbecuing in the park because you're black. You know, it's just something to bitch about, and when you didn't even pick up the book to see what it's about. I commend any. I love independent comics for one thing. I've always have been. I was back with Wandering Star back in the '90s when it first came out. Poison Elf. I met Drew back when it first came out, and of course, unfortunately, he passed on. Those are completely different genres, but they kind of face the same thing. Whereas people were judging a book by its cover, and it's unfortunate that you had to change the name. That's ridiculous. And I was wondering why, going through there, why it was saying Fetish Babies, and then we were to Barbara Unleashed, and so I was glad you explained that. But when on the opposite side, you get pushback from people in the towns you go to. What is the feedback that you're getting from those in the community that are finding your I don't want to call it a comic, but when they're finding your work, what feedback are you getting from those in the community?
From my direct community, there's two sides to it. First, there's a nervousness about even touching it because, like you said, most of the time when fetish is dealt with, it's dealt with poorly. There really hasn't been anything that really respected it. And I always make the pitch, and I'm sure you guys heard it. It's like 50 Shades of Grey if an adult had written that knew what they were talking about. And everyone loves that pitch because it opens them up. Okay, well, this is going to be different. So once you get past that, a lot of people thank me. I mean, I don't like to share people's stories because they're not mine to share. So I'll say this. I've had people who have read it come back to me and hug me and thank me because they had wished they had read the book because it would have prevented everything that happened. Because I deliberately put red flags everywhere throughout the book, but not in a preachy way. I don't make a list. Don't do this. Don't do this. I have a character that hopefully you're compelled by to listen to, explain to you the mistakes she's made. And if I've done my job right, you'll know those mistakes and you'll see it when it's happening. You'll be like, wait, time out. Wait, this is, something I don't want to experience. And like you said, a lot of, especially younger people who get into it, and it's not just a female problem, it's a male and female problem, but it is predominantly female. The first experiences a lot of them that have when they come into the community is abusive one. Someone tells them, I'm a dominant, you have to listen to me, and everything I says go. And what do they know? They're like, I guess this guy knows what he's doing, or this girl knows what they're doing, so I guess I'll just follow them. It's not like we get certified. It's not like there's a certificate you get. No, trust me, I'm good. It's still part of a relationship. So if you, like you said, if you go in unaware, how much trouble can you get into is immense. And you can get scars that live with you forever. And I always say that, and it's in the book. The dominants don't wear their mistakes, the submissives do. And it's a very true point. They have the scars that continue throughout their whole life. So I can say that we've had some positivity, and I appreciate the community. And the biggest compliment I get, and to your point about sexuality, is a lot of people say, well, Rob, I like your book, but it's very tame. And it's very tame for the reason that it was made to invite people into the conversation. I always looked at it like, hey, guys, this is your way to see what the culture is like. This is what you can see in the community. But I think at the end of this first series, which will be made into a trade this year, there's going to be a moment where it's like, okay, we leave it with a pretty intense story telling you that the future is not going to be so R-rated. I mean, we're not going to get explicit. I don't believe in explicit. I like movies that don't show graphic stuff, but have implications. And that's what we'll always do. We'll artistically tell a story without having to be graphic and disgusting. But we
you have to walk that fine line anyway, because you're already dealing with fetishes. So the stereotypes against that. So you really have to come at it in a very vanilla kind of way.
Yep.
In order to express that. But here's the thing, and you just mentioned it. You said there are no certificates for these things, for people to learn and understand. And I actually think that your workbook should be that certificate for people who are venturing into this world, into this community. And I think it's important for people to really, yes, I think it's really important for people to do some self-reflection and look into what it is that motivates them or turns them on, and push those boundaries. That's how we grow as people. And that's how we expand our imaginations and experiences. So tell us a little bit about your workbook.
All right, so this is the BDSM survey. I wanted to make something like and I'll be honest, I've created this, the earliest part of it as early as 15 years ago to help out people in the community. People who would ask me, well, how do you get to know someone and really do it? And there had been surveys, and there were these things called contracts, which are awful. 50 Shades talks about it, how a person can sign away their freedom as a person. I have different views in the community. I don't believe in what is called 24/7, where someone gives up their entire being to another person. I do believe that this is like a part of a relationship, but you have to have respect on both ends. This helps you establish that respect. It allows people to explore their likes. And I found this when people were filling things out, even for myself, like when I filled this out with someone that it was helping me along with the book, and we had played a couple times, and she was reading it, and she was like, I didn't know that you'd be willing to do that. And I was like, yeah, but she would have never assumed that. So there was a conversation, and I remember, because it was about being tied up. She's like, so you'd let me tie you up? You'd let me tie you up? And I was like, yeah, I don't care. I was like, but understand, I'm going to be unruly. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be like, you should really make that knot a little tighter. Like, I'm going to be that person. You probably don't want to, but I would do that to show a person, well, hey, if I'm going to tie you up, then I should show you that same amount of trust, as long as you have a skill level for it. And I think having this conversation, because there are some things, people read that. I remember there was this a friend's daughter comes up, and she starts reading the book, and we're hanging out, and I'm talking to my friend, and you see her look in her eye, and she's like, I didn't realize how many gags there were. And you see the look on my friend's face was like, how do you know about gags?
I didn't know about gags.
He was like, how do you know about that? Because we don't talk, like we're taught not to talk about sexuality, but to praise it somehow, to have countdown for young stars turning 18. All that's okay. But when we have an honest conversation about sexuality, when we want to talk about, even when it comes to be like the whole Me Too movement and all that, a lot of people were so uncomfortable to just admit, well, hey, maybe we can find a better way forward and stop pointing fingers. And because I don't think anyone wants to have those deep conversations. We're still in a culture which kind of makes it okay to lie to people to have sex. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do as a society and as a global entity to get better with how we treat each other. And things like this, where you just sit down and you're honest. And I'm in the community, and I hear everyone go, oh, well, there's no one like me in the world. And I know for a fact that's not true. It's just that we're all hiding who we are. I can't tell you how many people who won't back my Kickstarter send me messages and go, hey, I can't back it. I'm afraid my job will see it, and I can't afford that, but I really want your book. Can I PayPal you money? So they're giving me money on PayPal. So all my Kickstarters, you might not see how many people are actually backing it because they're privately backing it. That did change a little bit when Kickstarter finally allowed guest profiles, but guest profiles have kind of come under fire because you have creators misusing it or people trying to misuse it. So obviously they're reviewing it currently, last I saw, but I like that. But when you're creating something like this, again, if I had made this a parody book, no one would blink an eye. But it's because it takes a pro stance on something that is taboo, that, it intimidates people because we can't talk about sexuality. It's like, hee, oh my God, I like this. Because we're nervous about it because we see our culture, and we see how our culture attacks people for things constantly. Just even being a parent on social media, you get attacked for. Imagine when it comes to something that, a religion might consider problematic. Right. Or, this could be used against you later in your life because how many women have had revenge porn used against them in the last couple of years? And how slow are we to make it against the law to do that?
Right.
How disgusting is that? Very simple. Don't share someone's private photos of them being naked. If they pose for you, that's different. That's a private moment. You have to tell people that. We've lost our morality. So I'm hoping this kind of makes people appreciate what a relationship is, because I think we're losing the ability to just talk to each other and be honest. This is who I am. If you don't like who I am, let me know so I can move on. It reminds me of that Rick and Morty episode where Morty suddenly gets hyper intelligent, and they're trying to remove something from him, and he finally goes on the date with the girl that he really likes, and they don't connect, and he's like, well, that's what relationships are. It's getting to know each other. We just don't connect. And we have to get back to that. We have to stop obsessing over things we can't change and accept who we are.
Yeah,
it's funny because I have a lot of people who won't meet face to face. They won't have this conversation even on screen in front of the camera, but they'll text you all day. They'll be on Facebook all day. And, so that sort of anonymity, I think, opens up the door to having more personal conversations. But at the same time, we're losing our humanity and the ability to look a person in the eye, judge them by their character, and that presence that you feel, like I can trust you or I can't trust you, or, just whatever it is, so there's the plus and minus with that. But people don't like to be vulnerable. And so those honest conversations, sometimes people can't even look themselves in the mirror. So if they can't face the reality of dealing with themselves, how are they going to be honest with somebody else? And I think that your survey helps be that guide. Take a page at a time, go through it, be honest, and if you feel like you have to hide in your room and lock the door to do it, by all means do that, because that by finding the vulnerability and voicing that, whether it's through the survey or talking to somebody who's in the community, it empowers us to be our authentic self.
No, definitely. And it's like you said, we've lost the way to talk to each other and to disagree with each other and be okay with disagreeing with each other. Yeah. I remember one of the best parts of my growing up and having friends was how much we ragged on each other and made fun of each other. And we always knew we were there for each other, but we were honest, and we learned from being ragged on. We learned from that oppositional. To this date, I have a lot of friends who are completely different than me. I table with someone who's becoming a pastor right now, and I call myself the Indee devil, and I call him the Indee saint. I'm going to be doing it with another person who's in the church, and that I think that says also something to who I am. Despite taking an Indee devil persona, they understand who I really am, and they understand that I'm advocating for something that's not going away. So they can either accept it and be okay with it and realize that I'm not going to do anything to make them support it necessarily out loud. And they have shown me support, to their credit, but I wouldn't force them to come into what I am. I never ask anyone that you have to get into this. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy my books. You don't have to do that. That's not something I'm saying. These are here for people who are willing to have a conversation and be honest with themselves. But what I don't stand by is people who are bigots. I have no time in my life, and I will stand up to anyone who's a bigot, to not just the fetish community, but any community. A lot of my stuff has an underlying thread about humanity and how we can treat each other better. Even my kids' stories are all about treating people better. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I write something that has value, and I challenge people with their thoughts. I had people, like you said, that conversation online that can only happen online because they would never come on a camera and talk to me about it. They'll have behind closed doors. And I've gotten a bit of reputation for being someone you don't really want to have a debate with live, because I'm very quick with what I say. So a lot of these people don't even want to come on camera, let alone go telling me that the fetish community is bad. But I can say at the end of the conversation, they walk away and they're like, I never looked at it that way. I'm sorry. And I've been able to change people's minds. And that's super important. If I just go around and say, you're a bigot, fuck you, go to hell, I'm going to beat the crap out of you, I don't get to change your mind. So when I get abused online, when I get people attacking me online, I have to often take a deep breath. I can make a joke of it, like the whole sign thing, like, show me on this doll where the sign hurts you. That I can do, and I can make light of it because it's a joke. But what I can't do is fire back. Because the minute I fire back, I become what they want me to be. Something that can go and look, he's dangerous. He's a bad person. So instead, I tell the truth about them. and I point out things. I mean, I had an argument with someone that went to the point where you're just choosing to have a fetish. I'm like, no, I don't. I was like, would you tell that to someone who's gay? And they're like, absolutely not. Gay people can't choose what they're doing. They don't advertise it. And I was like, they don't advertise it? So you're saying they should go back and not talk about being gay? That's not what I'm saying. No one should have to hide who they are. And it clicked in their head. And there was this sudden moment of crap. Like, that's right. Being gay, being homosexual, being heterosexual. We advertise it, whether we mean to or not. And I hate this when it comes to the comic book industry, where people are like, oh, we don't need to hear about how a character's gay or bisexual or that. And I'm like, do you guys complain when a heterosexual person shows they're heterosexual? Because people don't realize that when they're kissing the opposite sex, that's a declaration of sexuality. And, you know, there are some comics that go a little heavy into it. But guess what? Unless you've lived a life where you've been looked down on, you won't understand why it's heavy. You won't understand why that creator is telling you something, because they've witnessed something that is biased. They've witnessed bigotry. And that's an ugly thing. And yes, we want to overcompensate for that. We want to point out how much of an asshole you are for attacking someone for something they can't choose. You don't choose color, you don't choose family, you don't choose your sexuality, and you don't choose what kinks and fetishes you're into. None of that's a choice. And to judge a person for that is awful. Of course, and this is the important thing in my books, just because you have something doesn't mean you can get away with doing anything you want. Right. You know, there is that civility line, and we have to get there, and we have to hold people accountable. And this even goes with the vanilla crowd. Their creators being called out to this date for their behavior with women who looked up to them. And I think that's important, that we continue those conversations. And it's not about canceling someone. It's about realizing we can do better. And not just better, but we can treat each other better. We can be better human beings to each other. When did that stop being the goal? When did it stop being okay for us all to just live together and support each other and rise each other up? I want to see that come back.
Yeah, very much so. And, you know, going back to something you said a minute ago, or I guess we all kind of touched on, about the conversations. Too many, especially in our world, guys, in the geek world, there are many that are interested in trying BDSM or even trying other sexual things, and they don't have the conversations anymore. Your workbook, man, going back into my 20s, I dabbled into swinging with a wife that I had. We had a great time. But the only way that came up was by accident. You know, we happened across something and it started the conversation. I don't know that I'd have ever brought that up with her at that time. And after that, though, and I told Meredith this here the other day, I'm of the opinion since then, for 30 plus years, that if it sounds fun, try it. If it is fun, do it again. As long as you have a consenting partner and, you know, there's no one getting hurt and no laws being broken. And your workbook, Rob, I really think that a lot of people inside those that are into comic books and those that aren't, that just, you know, need that little conversation starter with their partner, because it doesn't have to be, you know, tying up. It could be just something you finding out that your wife likes having her butt spanked, you know, and that you didn't know that until you did the workbook.
Or biting.
Yeah, biting. You know, I mean, there's a million different things that I always say, whatever someone does in the privacy of their own home is their business. Whatever turns them on, whatever makes them happy. And we have to get to a point, though, where consenting adults can have those conversations in this country. I know in other countries, you can see boobs on TV and a lot on commercials in a lot of countries. And here, you know, heaven forbid that you get a piece of side boob, you know, that you're going to have 50 million calls to the FTC or FCC. But
yeah, like Janet Jackson, you know, it was an accidental wardrobe malfunction, and she's banned from performing at the Super Bowl ever again. Come on, people.
Oh, the repercussions from that went on and on. I mean, the FCC started getting on radio stations. They had to start cutting songs that had been saying words for decades. They had to start bleeping them out. because, we're going to offend somebody. And I do understand that this country has a lot of faith. We have a lot of people of faith, but a lot of those people are bigots and two-faced. They will sit there and be in church and saying how bad it is, and then at home they're going and they're watching BDSM porn, with their wife in the other room, and they're not even having the conversation to be honest and saying, hey, this is what turns me on. So, Rob, tell everyone, where can they get the workbook?
Or the survey. We keep calling it a workbook.
Yeah,
I think of it as a workbook.
You know what? Someone had asked me recently on a thing if I consider this a comic book because it's so different. There aren't really, I don't think there's there's not one point in the book that has a panel. And we go with the blog format. So a workbook's not a bad example of it. Some people have called it a worksheet. I thought a worksheet was a little, it didn't work as well, but workbook's been used. That's fine. We're on Kickstarter right now. We're there until St. Patrick's Day. You could find it at freehugsandspanks.com. That's right. I bought a website. I knew, and we're gonna be trying to do cool stuff where we'll be taking pictures of people who got hugs or spanks if they permit us to. So we're gonna be doing some cool, funny stuff with that. But for now, it's just a redirect to our Kickstarter. You can find me on the road. I'm all over the place, and if you want a copy, you could always just send me an email, and I'll tell you how to PayPal me, because I know some people with this, it's sensitive. And I will say this to your point about how people don't talk to each other. I can't tell you how many times I see, and this is and people are amazed by this, because all the crap that is talked about me online, my highest consumer rate is female. That is my base right now. And my guy friends are always like, and this just goes to I guess part of my character. They're like, oh, you should see all the girls that come to talk to Rob and all the hot girls. And I'll be like, don't do that. I was like, they're people. Don't objectify them. Please don't do that. Please don't say those things. Because I had one creator who's a friend of mine who walks over and was trying to be funny and didn't realize how insulting he was in front of someone who is talking about the culture. And he puts down a massage parlor business card. And he's like, oh, here, this will go good for your book. You can hand these out with every book purchase. And he didn't realize it. I had to take him aside and I had to explain to him exactly what he did. So these conversations are so important because a lot of times we don't understand exactly what we're talking about a lot of times. To your point, we need to step in it. We need to make people feel uncomfortable. And sometimes feeling uncomfortable is okay because that means we're breaking you out of your shell. We're educating you and we're challenging your idea. Like if you're afraid of side boob, oh, honey, you have bigger problems. Like it's just a boob. A baby is supposed to eat from it. I don't care if you think it's disgusting. It doesn't matter what you think because nature created this well before your feelings became a problem, and it'll still be working after your feelings are far gone. So, and we have to stand up. It's like that George Carlin moment. We don't have a George Carlin right now in our generation, and we're suffering.
I wish.
Yes, we are.
And I give Dave Chappelle so much credit because he stepped up recently and he was like, okay, it's time to call all you people out on your bullshit. And he did a great job about it because we need that. We need to challenge each other. We need to make each other better. We're not going to have forward-thinking conversations if we're made into a PC culture. So that's why books like these are so important. And every book, everyone's personality. There are so many books out there I don't read. Like, I don't read a lot of romance books. So when someone tries to pitch me like an LGBT book, they'll have a tendency to be like, oh, and I've had creators be like, oh, is this because it's LGBTQ? I'm like, no, I don't like Betty and Veronica either. This is just, I don't like romantic stories very much in comic books or in books. I don't think they get into the dirtiness of a relationship. I don't think they're honest. You're telling a relationship in its best moment, the beginning. I want to see a relationship of people struggling when someone's supporting someone through cancer. Is that what your book is about? Is you showing me power? You showing me the power of love? Because I very much believe in love. And I believe in those connections. And I want to see that. If that's like, I love The Notebook. My friends are like, oh my God, Rob, I can't believe you like The Notebook. And I'm like, what, you want to fight me? Did you want to fight about this? Like, I like The Notebook. I thought it was well written. As a writer, I respect well written things. And it's never about an LGBTQ thing. I have friends who are LGBTQ. My character is bisexual. I have characters in the book who are going to be of all different types. There's no pin of right and wrong because the community I'm from has no right or wrong. It even gets to the point where some of the stuff's confusing even for me that it's coming up now. And it evolves the culture. There are things that change and go away. So I do think having conversations is super important. I think being open to hearing people is super important. You know, I have friends now who come to me with sexual problems, and I didn't expect that. It was a weird side effect of what I do. I've had friends be like, I need to ask you a question, and I don't want you to make fun of me. And I know it's serious.
Right.
But they don't know who else to talk to, and that goes to tell us. Because I've always been that friend to people where I've had the questions asked, but now I have community. I have a community of people coming up and being like, there's this girl, and she wanted me to tie her up. What do I do, Rob? And I become like a guru in the background for some people, and it's kind of fun. But now I have a book that says, hey, you know, read this, sit down with the girl, have that conversation, understand it. And I think that if more people do that, have conversations, read things that challenge them. I'll read things all the time that I don't necessarily think I'll like, just to see if I'll like it and I'll learn something from it. I always try to challenge myself that way, and I'll back projects. If I have like, oh, I don't like that project at all, but it looks like a good project, I'll back it for a PDF and I'll force myself to read it to challenge. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm right. You know, we'll find out. But I'm never going to grow if I always just have that plate of food I just like. I always have to try something new. When I don't like it, I just don't get it again.
Rob, let me ask you, have you had any pushback from venues? I mean, I know like when we apply to go to venues, they want, you know, this and that and a history of where you've been and what are you selling. So have you had any pushback from the venues?
Very rare. There's a South Carolina show, like the Captain something. I sent in an application. They're like, we don't accept people who do books about porn and gore. They were making my monsters a gore book, which it wasn't a gore book. If anyone, again, if you read it, you'd know. Right. And then Sci-Fi Bartow, I can't even make this up, said that I didn't align with their beliefs, their political beliefs, and they didn't think their conservative community would be accepting of me. Let me let you in a little truth here. Conservatives are very into BDSM. I know a lot of judges. I know a lot of people who are very business oriented who would definitely check the Republican box. They get down and get freaky. So that is not true. But again, it goes back to that. We'll invite the person who dresses up as Harley Quinn who has half of her boobs out. No problem. We'll give her a free table. But you, sir, how dare you talk about sexuality in an adult way? You go to the back of the line. Don't come back.
Yeah, so that was exactly the point that I was getting to. Is I've been going to the conventions since the 90s. I didn't go for a good decade, but back in the 90s, the conventions were highly sexualized. Every comic book that was out there had some big boob woman that was very, very scantily dressed and out there promoting the comic and the cover. And, you know, I took a 14-year-old boy with me to one, and there was this chick with, you know, quadruple G's or whatever. And he looked at me, he goes, those are some all-day suckers. And I about died laughing, you know, but I'm thinking, you know, comic books, you think kids, and that's not the case. I mean, yes, some comic books are geared towards children, but even the mainstream comics, Marvel had Miss Marvel raped. You know, they've had the twins hook up together with incest. You've had, I mean, just on and on. You've had all these little freaky kind of lines that you could say, well, Marvel shouldn't be allowed at your little convention either. But and I totally forget where I was going with that story, with that train of thought. But the convention areas, when they are saying, you know, no, you can't come and are, you know, you don't align with our beliefs, they are the very first ones that are allowing in the scantily clad cosplayers and are pushing them on their website. And then they don't even take 2 minutes to go and look at the website, you know, or to take a look at the content and to see that this is something that, you know, looking over your comic book, like I said earlier, it's not filled with graphic nudity or graphic sex. The artwork is great. That's the storyline, the writing, and the artwork are the two things that draw me into a comic. And this one with the, you know, granted, BDSM isn't something that at my age that interests me at this point, but I enjoyed the read. I thoroughly enjoyed the read. And having the survey, I could see back in my 20s, even 30s, that would have been something that would have been invaluable, especially as I'm dating around and you're trying to get to know someone. And for these attendees, and then also the locations to judge, full on literally judging a book by its cover. In this day and age, it's dangerous, man. I mean, because you're putting people out there that are uneducated, that don't have a venue to learn things, and you're going to have the submissives that do end up walking away with those scars. Like you said, I've known a lot of masters and subs, ones that just played online, and then ones that did it in real life, and I've seen everything from pure stupidity where, like you said, the 24/7, I control every word you say, yes master, no master, and to the real ones. And a project like this I can definitely get behind, because it's opening that conversation. And folks, I highly recommend that you go to free hugs and freespanksandhugs.com.
Free. Oh, now you got me thrown. I'm like, wait a minute. No, free hugs. Now we have to get the free spanks and hugs to make sure it goes either way. Right. See what I did there? Yeah, it's free hugs and spanks. And it's just fun because when you say free spanks and hugs, it doesn't sound as good as free hugs and spanks, but to make it fit on the poster, I did it in reverse.
Gotcha.
So I had to stop and I was like, wait a minute, what comes first? And for a while, we had lost the "and" because the original sign was this little light up box that were popular like 2 years ago. And I lost the "and," so it just said free hug spank. So people were like, what the hug spank? So I would be like, come here. And I'd grab them and give a nice big hug. And they're like, that's not too bad. And I'd spank them. I'm like, now you get a hug spank.
Right. Thank you. And
one of the things that I noticed with the comics, this is a common theme that we've talked about previously, with Matthew, is that comics and comedians, they're the speakers of the truth, and they do it in a way that makes us laugh, but it makes us really look at things. And like you said, we don't have a George Carlin in our life anymore. Man, I miss that man. But when we have things like this, the topics that you're talking about, the content that you have that you're able to share, this really opens up the world to a lot of people to be open and honest, and it's okay to be vulnerable. And the reason why I say that is because if we don't have those moments of vulnerability with the people that we want to surround ourselves with, then we're never going to get to the truth, and we're never going to see whether or not they are really a friend or a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I really have to applaud you for being an advocate and a big voice, and hopefully we'll help you spread that, to be vulnerable, to be okay, and to stand up for what's right.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you both actually reading it and seeing it. And I appreciate what Matt had said, because I'd written it to be a good story, and a lot of people don't realize that when they go into it. And I've had a lot of people be like, "Wow, that's actually a really well-written story," because they didn't expect it. And I don't think a lot of people expect well-written stories anymore. They're kind of used to comic books that just are pretty. And my books aren't just pretty. And granted, art's very important to me. You guys saw that. And I'm pretty sure did you guys know why the art changed? Did you read the explanation of why the art changes between each issue?
I did not. I missed that.
It's her perspective. So in the first book, she's writing a blog. So those are all things in her head. The second book, the world looks so grainy and dark because after a breakup or after abuse, we feel like the world is a shitty place. We feel like everything's darker. Sunny day isn't as sunny. It's just a little bit darker than it normally is. And then in the last book, she has this goal. I know what I'm going to do. I'm empowered. So we have this brighter, more cartoonish, more classic comic look to really show people, hey, she's on a mission and she knows what she's going to do. So we wanted to show that. We wanted to show how her experiences had affected her, and even her just view of the world had changed.
I'd say, and I totally missed that because I had even right before you came in, I had mentioned to Meredith that, you know, the first one was more like a blog, and then the second issue, it was more the comic book it kind of set up. And that's where I really got into the artwork. I started appreciating the artwork. And I didn't even see 3. Meredith, you didn't send me 3. But so I've
That's
got
the
one
one that explains the art too.
all right, there we go. But
Sorry.
that's all right. I got the first 2. Now, you know, it gives me something else to read this evening. And I know my wife will take a look at them as well. She's just as open as minded as I am. She loves this kind of stuff. When we do these type of interviews and we get any kinds of stuff, she's always taking a look at the stuff as well. And when we do movies, I have her watch them. Because it also gives me a little insight into what she's thinking. Used to, before Meredith came along, I used it because for that female perspective. Now I got Meredith, I can get her perspective. But sometimes, you know, I still take the wife's perspective as well. Like a job, she loved it. But anyway, Rob, is there anything, or where are you going next? Where's your next show?
Actually, this weekend I'm going to be at an oddities event. It's a 2-day show in I'm drawing a blank. Lakeland, Florida, I think it is. There's a mall in Lakeland. It's like a mall show. Hopefully I don't get the coronavirus, because that's a big thing right now. Hopefully that's not a big deal. And the rest I don't know, because everyone's panicking. Everyone's talking about canceling cons right now. I want to say that I'm going to be at MegaCon this year, but I don't know if there will be a MegaCon at the way that they're pacing this out. We're all just kind of sitting around waiting and hoping that we don't get our cons taken away from us. And granted, I'm not making light of something that is, you know, there are people dying. So, and I have family who have medical problems like asthma. Something like this could be very complicated for people with asthma. So I'm very much watching it, and I'm concerned, not necessarily about my health. I'll think I'll be fine. But if I brought this home and somehow brought it into my community, and my niece who has asthma got it, I would feel horrible. So there is that like nervousness right now of, well, what do we do next? So I'm going to be at every con that they'll let me be at, as far as the coronavirus is, or whatever they're calling it now is. I hope we all get past it. I hope people watch this 6 months from now and go, oh, he was worried about that. He was an idiot. That passed 2 weeks after they record it. That would be the best news to hear, and I really hope that, because we're starting to heat up in Florida, and I'm told this virus won't survive in heat. So I'm very happy to see the heat coming back. Normally, I don't want the heat in February and March, but I'll take it if it gets rid of this. But yeah, I have that. And you guys can always just check me out at the IndeeDevil.com and keep up with what we have going on. And don't forget to support other great creators with IndeeAdvocates.com. So many great creators out there right now creating the worlds that you wouldn't see through Marvel and DC. Because all Marvel and DC want to talk about is Captain America, Batman, Wonder Woman. They're not trying to bring you new characters unless they somehow slip them in an outfit that's already been pre-established. So go to Indie Comics and support people who are creating the next world that you never knew existed, but now it does.
Exactly. And if you happen to be an indie writer, creator, artist, drop us a line either at Matthew@geekinsider.com or Meredith@geekinsider.com. We definitely want to speak with you. We are building up our indie comic side of things, and as you can see, we'll cover just about anything as long as it's something that we think that our geek audience will enjoy. And this is definitely something that we both thought that everybody would enjoy. Rob, we really appreciate you joining us here, man.
Appreciate it.
Meredith, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I usually end our interviews with one question, and that is, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
This should be good.
That's a good question. I think, honestly, the one thing I'd say is to forgive yourself and not take the blame for things that weren't your fault, and to work through everything you've been through. Like, seek people to talk to. Don't hide it. Don't internalize everything, because if you get healthy, you'll find a better way forward. And until you try to get healthy, you're not going to be good for anyone around you, because you're going to be suffering from things that you couldn't have controlled.
Very cool.